we haven't talked about this story yet, but I think it is a mess for the Kansas City Chiefs. If you'll remember, on February 4th, right before the Super Bowl, Britt Reed, who is the son of Andy Reid, the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, he was in an accident and injured very severely a 5-year-old girl in a traffic accident. And there were reports that he may have been drinking before that accident. Well, he was charged with a felony DWI on Monday in the Kansas City area, and prosecutors announced that they are intending to hold him accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Britt Reed had a .113 blood alcohol level at the time of the accident. Now, this 5-year-old girl, unfortunately, has been severely injured in the process and is going to have all sorts of challenges living a normal life, according to reports, as she attempts to recover from the accident that Britt Reed caused there on the side of the road. And he was allegedly, by the way, going somewhere in excess of 80 miles an hour, according to reports, maybe around 84 miles per hour right before the accident. And again, he had a blood alcohol level of .113, and he has been charged with a felony DWI. So I think this is an interesting point of discussion. I'm going to put my lawyer hat on here. Britt Reed has been fired, by the way, by the Kansas City Chiefs, so he's no longer an employee. His dad, Andy, obviously remains the head football coach there. Where this could become a big story going forward is I think many people are going to start to ask the question, where was Britt Reed drinking? Because this accident occurred not very far from the Kansas City Chiefs facility. And so, to my knowledge, and there are some media that are starting to ask this question, to my knowledge, there has not been any report officially of where he was drinking. And the danger here for the NFL from the perspective of a team being involved is it's possible he was drinking at or near the facility in some way. So, what would be the implications under the NFL personal conduct policy for a franchise if they were having alcohol consumed on the premises and then that led to this accident? It could be a significant issue for the Kansas City Chiefs going forward. And I'm thinking about this because I've seen some people talk about it, but a very minimal degree. And I've talked about it a little bit on this program, but hardly anybody else. And then I saw Dan Wetzel, who has long been a friend of the program. Dan Wetzel came out and said it's time for the Chiefs and the NFL to provide answers in the tragic Britt Reed DWI case. And the headline for his story is, where was Britt Reed drinking before his alleged DWI? The Chiefs and the NFL owe the public an answer. And I think that's true. And again, some of the details of this, just after 9:30 on February 4th in the evening, he drove his pickup truck into two cars parked on the highway's breakdown lane. 2 children were hurt, and the 5-year-old girl, in this case, Ariel Young, was in the back seat of her mom's Chevy Traverse, and she suffered, I'm reading from Dan Wetzel's article, a traumatic brain injury. And now, months later, we're into April, obviously, after this incident happened in early February. She can't walk or talk. She's finally out of the hospital, but she's being fed by a tube. And so, I mean, this is a devastating injury for this 5-year-old girl. And as a result, there is a lot of significant penalties that could be levied against Britt Reed, including 1 to 7 years in prison. And a lot of people are starting to ask the question, where exactly was Britt Reed drinking? Because according to the court documents, Reed said he had left work and was entering southbound I-435 from Raytown Road. That's just a few steps from the Chiefs' offices and training complex. So Reed could have gone somewhere else, but there aren't really any bars, restaurants, or residences, according to Dan Wetzel, between the facility and the on-ramp. And it would be interesting where, and if he was actually drinking and getting drunk. And this is a big deal. Obviously, this is me putting my lawyer hat on. The Chiefs could potentially be culpable in a civil lawsuit for massive amounts of damages to this girl and her family if one of their employees was drinking at work and he then left drunk and then had a accident, particularly if the Chiefs either knew or should have known that drinking was happening and taking place at their facility as they were preparing to get ready for the Super Bowl. So, again, under the NFL's personal conduct policy, this is something that could certainly be investigated and potentially create massive issues for the Kansas City Chiefs, as well as the criminal issues that Britt Reid himself is already dealing with. And we know that Andy Reid has had a tremendously successful coaching career, but off the field he's had challenges involving the behavior of his sons. And this Britt Reid tragedy, I think it's fair to say, is just the latest off the field related tragedy that Andy Reid's going to have to deal with. So I think this is a big story. I think it could become a bigger story going forward. Obviously, the victim here, this 5-year-old girl, I mean, that is a devastating result for her to be in a situation where, again, months later, she is still not able to again, I'm reading directly from Dan Wetzel's piece. She can't walk or talk, and she is fed via a tube. This is a 5-year-old girl that was seated in the back seat of her mom's Chevy Traverse when the Britt Reid slammed into the back of their car. So I do think this is a story worth paying attention to. It's unfortunate that the NFL has got a lot of different legal issues all of a sudden that have in many ways overshadowed some of the excitement of the draft. I would say as exciting as the NFL draft is coming up in a couple of weeks, the biggest story in the NFL right now remains Deshaun Watson. And now this Britt Reid incident could involve the Kansas City Chiefs as well. And while I'm talking about the Britt Reid case, I should mention that over the weekend, Friday afternoon, that Deshaun Watson continued his legal representatives, particularly Rusty Hardin, to try to defend him. But it's just not really registering with most people, because Rusty Hardin came out and said, well, the reason why Deshaun Watson was having to book so many massage appointments was because of the challenges of COVID. And that doesn't even make any sense at all, because if you were worried about COVID and you were Deshaun Watson, wouldn't you be far less likely to be booking strangers on Instagram to give you massages? Because everybody's trying to avoid bringing COVID into the facility. And so most people in the NFL didn't expand their social circles during the COVID year. They contracted it in a big way, yet Deshaun Watson during COVID is still setting up all these different appointments with all of these total strangers. So again, this is me wearing my lawyer hat here. The Britt Reid story is an incredible cloud for the NFL, as is the Deshaun Watson story. And in terms of player storylines, I think, unfortunately, the Deshaun Watson storyline and what's going to happen with him going forward is a bigger story even than the NFL draft, which we are, I believe, am I doing the math right here, like 16 or 17 days away from officially being able to break down. And we've been obviously talking a lot about the NFL draft. Should mention this to you as well as we start off the second hour. Mac Jones has now moved out, according to FanDuel, to a minus 333 favorite to be the draft pick of the San Francisco 49ers. So if you're playing along at home, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall to the Jags. Zach Wilson, number 2 overall to the Jets. Luke Wilson, obviously, brother of Owen Wilson, pretty talented actor. Mac Jones going 3rd overall to the 49ers. That is where we are kind of working through 3 quarterbacks to start, and the Atlanta Falcons may be the pivot point maybe the fulcrum upon which this draft turns, because are they going to stick with Kyle Pitts and try to go get another weapon for Matt Ryan, or are they going to make a move there? That is, I think, the biggest question right now in the NFL. When we come back, we are scheduled to be joined by John McClain of the Houston Chronicle. We'll break down the NFL draft with him. We'll talk about the situation with Deshaun Watson, and we'll ask a question that we talked about a little bit in the first hour of the program. Is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer or not? And how would we assess his Hall of Fame credentials if we elected to do so? All of that's still coming your direction. I appreciate all of you for hanging out with us. This is Outkick on Fox Sports Radio.